yeah, things, you hear a bump or something at night, and it's like, okay, what is that? I actually have a firearm that I sleep with next to my head with a flashlight on it, and that's the first thing I go to. I grab that. I mean, it might sound a little extreme, but it's just how it is. I can't sleep without it anymore.
Meet Sam. He recently returned from serving in Iraq. For many people, being in a crowded place like a baseball stadium or busy grocery store feels comfortable, but not for Sam. What should be a nice night out, taking his wife Tara to a restaurant, isn't fun for him anymore. He can only handle it if he sits with his back to the wall where he has a good view of the exits, and even then, he's too on edge to really enjoy it. At home, things aren't the way they used to be either. His sleep is restless at best, and some nights Tara isn't sure if Sam comes to bed at all. Sam seems to have a short fuse these days, and sometimes he snaps at Tara over tiny misunderstandings. What he and Tara never talk about is the trauma he experienced when he was deployed. He's never mentioned the guilt, the weight he carries around, wishing he could have done more to prevent what happened. Instead, he's turned inward, pulling away from family and friends. Tara tried to give him some space, but after months passing without change, she really started to worry. She was the one to finally say what they were both thinking: it's time to get help. That's when Sam finally decided to take action. He reached out to a doctor who told him about PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder. Sam's symptoms were getting in the way of enjoying his life. Re-experiencing, hyperarousal, feeling worse about yourself or the world, and avoidance are the 4 types of symptoms people with PTSD have. Sam's doctor explained each.
Disorder. You might be thinking, does therapy for PTSD really work? Or what about medications? Well, there are treatments that work, and you have choices. Visit the National Center for PTSD website at www.ptsd.va.gov.
So stress is a fascinating thing to study because, like death, it's inevitable, and everyone faces it in their day-to-day life. And I study how stress affects the brain. Now, most of the stress that we face as regular people on a regular day-to-day basis is things like economic downturns, relationships ending, issues like this, which are manageable, but they wear us down. Statistics seem to predict that roughly 7 out of 10 people, or about 70% of the general population in North America, will be exposed to some form of a traumatic stressor in their lifetime. So that's very interesting because that's a pretty big subset of the population. But what's interesting is of this 7 out of 10 or 70%, only about 10% of these people will then go on to actually develop post-traumatic stress disorder. And what that equates to is that within the general population then, what we're looking at is roughly 8% of the people in North America at some point in their life will experience post-traumatic stress disorder. So a group in Chicago did a series of very interesting studies, but what they did is they put people in a brain scanner and they had them look at images that we know light up the amygdala. Since this is the part of our brain that searches for threat, it's a threat detector, in our environments, it lights up very reliably with things like a picture of a weapon, a scared face, blood, and a car accident, things like this will reliably turn the amygdala on. And so what they did in this study is they gave people in advance THC. So THC, for those of you that don't know, is the psychoactive constituent of cannabis. So this was an isolated preparation from cannabis to say, well, what does THC do to the amygdala when someone gets stressed out? And what they found was that they actually got a very robust blunting of the amygdala in response to stress cues. So you show people these things that normally light up the amygdala and help generate a state of anxiety, and in the presence of THC, this just didn't really seem to happen. So does pot actually help people with PTSD? And the answer I would have to say at this point is maybe, with science pointing to probably. And that will beg the next question, which is, so does that mean that smoking pot is a good cure for PTSD? Which I would say probably not. This is not something that's like a general approach, I think, that should be taken in medicine. It's telling us something, and there are people who have through self-medication learned that it helps their symptoms, and that's good for them. But in terms of using this as a new medication approach, there's going to be a lot of issues surrounding that. And given that there's a lot of change in the legal landscape in Canada that may be coming in the next couple of years, it'll be very interesting to see where this goes. The one thing I'm really hoping for is more actual clinical trials so that we can answer that question definitively, yes or no. Thank you for your attention.
My name is Chad Myron. I'm 31, and my service dog is Norman. He's fully trained to be my service dog for PTSD. I served in Afghanistan from May 2010 until December 2010. We were stationed in a village called Nakone. Just about right away, our outpost started getting attacked almost on a daily basis. Usually small arms fire, so AKs, rockets. It wasn't bad. I know it sounds weird, but that was not the worst part of it at all. The problem came in was when we started going out on patrols and constantly started finding IEDs. They were everywhere. And it wasn't even just Canadians who were stepping on them, like even the locals, civilians, even children sometimes. So it really brought a strong sense of our mortality. Like any day we could die. The odds are actually pretty decent that it's going to happen. It starts to wear down on you. One of our engineer sergeants lost his life. So he was disarming an IED when it went off. We had to get him, get his remains back to the helicopter so they could take him away. So that was the hard part.
How did that experience leave you?
Traumatized. It was hard. I knew that it would affect me later on, but at the time I just kind of took it all in and buried it.
Jesus Christ!
It really started wearing down on me, and I got back to Canada, and I was just angry all the time after that. I started drinking quite a bit. Anytime I was in a bar, I always wanted to fight other people. Just kind of stopped going out altogether and just kind of locked myself in my apartment. Basically, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. Ended up on, I think, 5 different medications. 2 for sleeping, 1 for staying awake during the day, 1 for depression, and 1 for anger. So my psychologist, she said, I've heard about this group of people who are doing service dogs for veterans. Do you think you'd be interested in this? I was really willing to try anything at that point, so that's when things started slowly improving. Obviously with a dog, you have to go out, you have to take him out for bathroom breaks, for walks. That was the starting point for me.
You can see how calm he is, right? Just having that presence around you kind of helps you get grounded and keeps me calm too.
One of the big things was with crowds, lots of people being around, you just start getting tense and it just starts compounding. When you're out in public and you need some space, you can command the dog to block, and that'll force people to walk around you and give you space that you need. So there were times when I would have flashbacks. I would go back to Afghanistan.
Nudge.
One of the cues is you just straight up tell him to nudge you and he'll come up and headbutt you. Kind of snap you out of wherever you are. Oh, good boy. Yes, good boy. So when I first got back, you always kind of feel this sense of unease. You're always kind of feeling threatened.
Seek it.
He has another command called Seek It, where he'll search through the apartment. It's primarily for making you more comfortable, and that just gives you a better sense of security.
He's kind of got your back. He's always calm. Keeps a smile on your face. Norman, come here.
I'm doing a lot better today. Out of everything that I've gone through and done, the dog has probably helped the most.
Without him, not sure how far along my recovery I would be. I don't think I would be where I am today without him.
Yeah, he's fully trained now. What's that? Big part of it is just realizing that you're not broken. It can get better, you can heal. And the dogs help a ton with that. So.